Welcome back to the story of Moses. At the end of part 1, Moses got God mad at him, which was not a good thing. So he decided he should go talk to Pharaoh, which was a good thing. In part 2, Moses will talk to Pharaoh, a lot. Pharaoh would change his mind, a lot. We probably would call that a flip-flop. We will learn about the 10 plagues, Passover, the big exit, and an extremely wild sea adventure. So let's get started. For the next 7 chapters in Exodus, we will take a look at how well this all went. Okay, so the first attempt is not always successful. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh to ask for a 3-day journey into the desert to offer sacrifices to the Lord. But Pharaoh responded that he did not know this God and told them to get back to work. Then Pharaoh ordered the slave drivers to tell the Israelites that they will have to gather their own straw, but keep their daily quota of bricks the same. Pharaoh said, "Lazy, that's what you are. That is why you keep saying, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Now get to work." When they saw Moses and Aaron, they complained, "May the Lord look upon you and judge you. You have made us a stench to Pharaoh and his officials, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us." God reminded Moses of his promise, and Moses relayed this to the people, but they would not listen. I guess I can understand why. All they saw was that Moses was making things harder for them. Moses was now 80 years old, and Aaron was 83. When they went to Pharaoh again, this time they were to show signs to Pharaoh that they were sent from God. Pharaoh asked for a miracle. Moses told Aaron to throw down his staff. It became a snake. Then Pharaoh told his magicians to do the same, and their staffs became snakes. But then Aaron's staff swallowed up the other snakes. Pharaoh was not impressed. I'm not sure why. All right, so Pharaoh needed a little more convincing. Let's take a look at what was the plague number 1. Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh in the morning and again tell Pharaoh that the Lord has told him to let his people go. Then Moses tells Aaron to stretch his staff over the waters of Egypt, the streams, canals, and ponds and reservoirs. They all turned into blood. The fish in the Nile died, and the river smelled really bad. They had to dig wells to get fresh water. Plague number 2. Moses goes to Pharaoh again, this time with the threat of frogs. Frogs everywhere, in the palace, in the bedroom, on the bed, into the ovens, everywhere. Surprising, the Pharaoh's magicians did the same thing. Not sure why they needed more frogs, except that they wanted to prove that Moses was not the only one who could do these things. But then Pharaoh relented and said, "Take them away, and I will let the people go." When asked when Moses should do this, he said, "Tomorrow." Again, why not say now? When Pharaoh saw the frogs were gone, he hardened his heart again and would not listen to Moses. So comes number 3, gnats. This one came with no warning. The next plague was brought on by Aaron striking the dust with his staff. The dust became gnats. Some versions of the Bible say lice, but whichever, it's pretty annoying. The gnats were on men and animals. Up to this point, the Egyptian magicians were able to replicate the miracles, but this time they could not. The magicians told Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God," but Pharaoh's heart was hardened and he would not listen. So number 4. Again, Moses and Aaron approach Pharaoh with their request, "Or else there will be flies everywhere. In Goshen, where the Israelites live, there will be none." The next day, flies were everywhere. I can't imagine if these were the biting flies that we sometimes get on the beach. Pharaoh finally gave in and told them to go sacrifice in the desert, but not to go too far. So the flies left. And guess what? Pharaoh hardened his heart again and would not let the people go. Number 5, disease. Again Moses went to Pharaoh and told Pharaoh to let the people go, or a terrible disease will come upon all the livestock in the field, horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, sheep, and goats, but not one of those of the Israelites were affected. Pharaoh still said no. A very stubborn person. Number 6, boils. This was a skin disease that was brought about when Moses and Aaron spread the ashes from the furnace into the air. Not even Pharaoh's magicians could come before him because of the boils on their skin. The Bible says that it was not limited to just people, but the beasts of Egypt as well. That is, those that did not die from the last plague. You guessed it, Pharaoh would still not listen. So we come up to number 7. Moses stretched his hands toward the sky and brought on hail. The hail was unlike any they had experienced before. The hail was mixed with fire. If the people came inside and brought their animals inside also, that is, those that were not affected from the last few plagues, only those left in the field and any crops in the field were destroyed. The land of Goshen was again spared. Pharaoh declared that he had sinned and said he would let the people go. As soon as Moses stopped the hail, Pharaoh changed his mind. Number 8. Another warning to Pharaoh that if he did not let the people go, there would be swarms of locusts eating everything in sight. Pharaoh did consent to let the men go, but not the women and children. So Moses stretched out his staff over the land, and the locusts came so thick the land became black. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and admitted his sin and asked for forgiveness. The Lord sent a wind from the west, and the locusts were gone. But again, Pharaoh's heart was hardened. Number 9. The plague of darkness was described as so dark it could be felt. No one could see anyone else or leave his place for 3 days. Yet the Israelites had light in the places where they lived. Pharaoh summoned Moses and said all the people could go, but they had to leave their flocks and herds behind. Moses refused to accept the offer, and Pharaoh finally said, "Get out of my sight. Make sure you do not appear before me again. The day you see my face, you will die." Moses replied, "Just as you say, I will never appear before you again." And finally, number 10, the death of the firstborn. The 10th and final plague was the death of the firstborn of all the people and animals. This was a plague on the Israelites and the Egyptians. The plague consisted of the firstborn being killed on a certain night. God told Moses that after this, Pharaoh will let you go. He will drive you out from here. The men and women of Israel will ask for articles of silver and gold, and the Egyptians will gladly give all to them. To avoid the punishment, the people of Israel will kill a sacrificial lamb, sheep or goat, and paint the doorposts of the house with the blood of the lamb. When the Lord passed through the land, he would not kill the firstborn of the houses that had shown their trust in the provision of salvation. This 10th plague was the final one and became known as the plague of death. The Hebrews were spared because of the steps they followed, which became known as the Passover. The angel of death passed over the houses of the Hebrews. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on the throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner who sat in the dungeon, and the firstborn of the livestock as well. There was loud wailing in Egypt, and there was not a house without someone dead. So now we take a look at the Exodus. During the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Up, leave my people. Go worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herd as you have said, and go." And the Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth. the Egyptians feared themselves to be the next to be killed and gave all they could to get the Israelites out of their land. The first 7 days involved traveling day and night to Succoth, where they gathered the bones of Joseph. They had been in Egypt now 430 years. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said if they face war, they might change their minds and turn and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by desert road toward the Red Sea. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him because Joseph had made the sons of Israel swear an oath. He had said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up with you from this place. After leaving Succoth, they camped at Etham, on the edge of the desert. By the day, Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night, leaving. Neither the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. They are to encamp by the sea, directly opposite Baal Zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around in the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. When Pharaoh realized that the Israelites were gone, he said, "What have we done? We lost their services." So he got his army together, 600 of his best chariots, and all the other chariots, horsemen, and troops, and pursued the Israelites. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you've done this to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Yes, the Israelites panicked. We say crazy things when we panic. Did they really say to Moses to leave them alone in Egypt to serve the Egyptians? Was it really better getting beaten and working 7 days a week there? But Moses answered, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Compare his answer here to the excuses back at the burning bush. He has come a long way in his trust of God. I often think that we should be bold for God in difficult times too. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7 says, "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. You see, God protected them from the approaching army. All this still had to alarm the Israelites, though. Remember, they didn't know what would happen next. Would they just stay there until the Egyptian army got tired and left? After all, the Israelites had their back to the sea. Were they going to go? Is God going to supply boats? Remember, they had been marching for many days and were tired, and now they see the entire Egyptian army ready to take them back. The army won't kill them because they need them for labor. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. So let's watch.
Move, great one! You cannot reach the fire of God! flux. We must go with all speed.
Go where? To drown in the sea? How long will the fire hold Pharaoh back?
Will it hold?
After this day, you shall see his chariots no more.
No! You'll be dead under them!
The Lord of hosts will do battle for us. Behold his mighty hand.
God opens the sea with the blast of his nostrils.
Lead them through the midst of the waters. His will be done.
He opens the waters before them, and he bars our way with fire. Let us go from this place. Men cannot fight against a god.
Better to die in battle with a god than live in shame.
Praise God and down into it!
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. What was Pharaoh thinking to send his army after the Israelites? I guess people in power will do some amazing, crazy things, and unfortunately the people under them suffer. The Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the great power the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. Again, imagine living through all of this. It had to take some time for it all to sink in. And this brings us to the end of part 2. And the Israelites lived happily ever after. Or not. But how about some thoughts? How would you have handled all this if you were in Moses' sandals? As patient as he was? As bold as he was? How would you have responded if you had been a slave in Egypt? Would you have followed Moses? Would you have feared the unknown? You almost have to pretend it's like watching a movie and you don't know how it's going to end.